No one anticipated it. It's not policymakers in the Capitol, not financiers in New York, not even the chief executives of America's dominant retail chains. Transport vehicles sat idle. Perishable cargo decayed in the heat. Hundreds of millions in merchandise became trapped in transit. Then came the decisive blow. Mexico formally suspended a significant segment of its shipments northward. This was no minor disruption. It was a geopolitical detonation shaking the foundations of the planet's leading economy. The United States, long accustomed to dictating commercial terms to its neighbor, received a resounding declaration. We are not your silent partner. We are your sovereign counterpart. Provoked by sharp tariff escalations under a renewed Trump administration, including a startling 17% duty on tomatoes, what started as a trade disagreement rapidly escalated into a full-blown economic confrontation. President Claudia Sheinbaum, flanked by her economic advisors and a tense press briefing, delivered a terse statement that sent shockwaves through international finance. If you obstruct us, we will also close access. Overnight, the vital trade artery between the US and Mexico constricted, unleashing alarm across the American South. Grocery shelves in Texas and Arizona began to thin. Prices for produce and staples surged. Major retailers like Walmart and Costco issued warnings about dwindling stocks. Behind the scenes, corporate representatives flooded Capitol Hill, demanding intervention. For Mexico, this was no rash reaction. It was a deliberate strategy to forge new global connections. Within days, Sheinbaum's administration dispatched trade representatives to China, India, Brazil, and the UAE. Agreements were swiftly inked with Asian ports. Export pathways that once flowed almost exclusively northward were abruptly rerouted east and south. Tomatoes earmarked for California were diverted to Shanghai. Steel previously destined for Detroit was redirected to São Paulo. This Mexican shift wasn't just disrupting NAFTA-era flows. It was openly contesting America's position as the unchallenged economic hub of the hemisphere. The signal was unmistakable. Mexico refuses to remain subordinate. As U.S. agricultural producers protest and auto manufacturers desperately seek new suppliers, a critical question emerges. Has Mexico initiated the decline of American trade supremacy? Or is this the dawn of a new international structure, where developing economies across Asia and Latin America form coalitions without seeking Washington's approval? One reality is clear: the age of passive acquiescence has ended. While the U.S. scrambled for solutions, Mexico intensified its strategy. The Sheinbaum administration stood firm against Washington's threats, bolstering its stance with emergency aid for domestic industries. It's absorbing short-term costs to solidify its new approach. Industrial centers like Monterrey, Tijuana, Ciudad, and Reynosa, once emblems of tight U.S.-Mexico manufacturing ties, became silent battlegrounds. Cargo terminals fell quiet as thousands of export-oriented firms pivoted under coordinated government direction. The precision of the maneuver was striking. Mexico wasn't severing ties, it was constructing alternatives. While the White House issued stern rebukes and hinted at financial countermeasures, Mexican diplomats were already finalizing agreements in Jakarta, Mumbai, and Dubai. The imagery was potent: a Latin American nation outmaneuvering Washington on the global stage through deliberate, strategic statecraft. Central to this was a fundamental principle: economic sovereignty above all. The world witnessed Mexico joining nations willing to diverge from US-led systems, lining instead with emerging blocs like BRICS, plus concrete action followed rhetoric. Mexico confirmed attendance at the upcoming BRICS Plus summit in Rio de Janeiro, signaling potential membership and deeper involvement in alternative financial mechanisms, including the BRICS Development Bank, a prospect unimaginable years prior. Meanwhile, Americans felt the impact. Midwestern farmers faced input shortages. Consumers saw prices for essentials like tomatoes, avocados, and auto components jump within days. Protests arose as business leaders urged President Trump to reassess the tariff policy that sparked the crisis. The irony was profound. America First measures intended to assert dominance had instead ignited defiance, actively redrawing global trade networks. Critics within the U.S. Congress, even those typically aligned with stricter border policies, pushed for renewed talks with Mexico. But Sheinbaum moved forward. Her government's narrative resonated across Latin America. Economic linkage to the U.S. need not equate to dependency, and might now represent a vulnerability. This clash revealed something far greater than disputes over specific goods: the erosion of the assumption that America's neighbors would always comply. Mexico is no longer just responding. It is setting the agenda. In doing so, it demonstrates that resisting economic pressure is possible for those willing to take the risk. Asian investment interest grew, and global shipping firms explored new Mexican partnerships. U.S. media grappled with the narrative, oscillating between condemnation of Mexico's recklessness and acknowledgement of the self-inflicted damage from U.S. tariffs. The image of unchallenged U.S. trade dominance frayed. Crucially, leaders across Central and South America voiced support for Mexico. Chile and Argentina applauded its resolve. Bolivia and Colombia discussed a new regional bloc to reduce reliance on U.S. markets. The concept was clear: collective defiance and coordinated independence. In Washington, discord erupted. Lobbyists pressured lawmakers, who pressured the White House. Trump remained defiant, accusing Mexico of betrayal and warning of consequences. Yet markets barely reacted. The disruption was entrenched. Supply chains were fractured, confidence eroded, and America's leverage over its southern neighbor was visibly waning. President Sheinbaum, projecting calm resolve, saw her domestic popularity surge. She was hailed not just as a leader, but as the architect of a renewed national identity built on economic dignity. Her team's transformation of crisis into opportunity commanded international respect. As the BRICS Plus summit neared, the symbolism intensified. Mexico was exiting the U.S. orbit. From Sinaloan farms to Veracruz ports, businesses recalibrated. Government agencies accelerated certifications for new destinations. Trade missions flourished in Asia, showcasing products once bound for the U.S. This was no gambit. It was the emergence of a new reality, a profound economic decoupling. The U.S. confronted a harsh truth. Interdependence with Mexico had been grossly underestimated. The flow of tomatoes, avocados, auto parts, and aluminum wasn't a one-way benefit. It was a mutual necessity. Without it, industries stalled. Restaurants paid exorbitant prices. Michigan auto plants faced delays. The invisible foundation of American affordability had been removed. The political cost became stark. Voters in border states, including conservative farmers and entrepreneurs, voiced frustration, directed not at Mexico, but at Washington. "Our reliance on them exceeds theirs on us," lamented a Texas agricultural executive, a sentiment echoing widely. Bipartisan concern grew in Congress as the trade war's abstract consequences became tangible. School cafeterias short on fruit. Construction delayed by missing materials. Mexico, meanwhile, adapted. Emergency logistics hubs activated. Government platforms matched exporters with new international clients. Subsidies provided a buffer. China seized the moment, quickly signing deals for Mexican agricultural goods and offering discounted shipping lanes. This was geostrategy. Beijing leveraged Mexico's stance to diminish U.S. influence and expand its own logistical reach in the Americas. Sheinbaum's message resonated. This is not retaliation. This is evolution. The phrase ignited social media and protests across Latin America, becoming a rallying cry against external economic dominance. Mexico had sparked not just a bilateral clash, but a continental awakening. The looming question intensified. If Mexico can do this, who follows? Could Chile, Colombia, or Brazil someday halt key exports to pressure Washington? Is the era of U.S.-centric trade truly ending? Think tanks in D.C. grappled with the unsettling prospect of an economic order where dominance is perpetually contested. Reports surfaced of preliminary talks between Mexico, Russia, and India on a new trilateral forum, bypassing U.S.-dominated institutions. The BRICS Development Bank invited Mexican participation, offering alternative financing. Latin American leaders dubbed Mexico the tip of the spear in regional realignment. Data reflected the shift. Mexican exports to Asia jumped 19% in weeks, while U.S. agricultural vulnerability indicators spiked. The boldness of Mexico's move, shattering decades of trade orthodoxy, stunned global elites. With the 2026 U.S. elections approaching, candidates formulated responses. Trump allies demanded a harder line, framing Mexico as a strategic threat. Moderates pleaded for de-escalation, fearing the vacuum would be filled by China, India, and Russia. Pentagon analysts assessed national security risks. Could rare earth supply chains shift? Might Mexican ports host Chinese logistics under trade cover? The unthinkable was now plausible. For ordinary Americans, the result was stark. Emptier shelves, higher prices, delayed goods. Yet the original tariffs remained. Was it pride, political calculus, or a dangerous illusion of absolute power? Meanwhile, Sheinbaum's approval soared domestically. She framed the move as liberation from dependency and one-sided rules. Her voice became a continental rallying cry. There is life beyond the North. The ultimate question crystallized. Has Mexico opened the door to a post-American trade era? We're witnessing the start of a global reset or a volatile economic Cold War. As new alliances form and old ones fracture, the foundations of global commerce are shifting unpredictably. One message, however, resonates with absolute clarity. Mexico is no longer merely a neighbor. It is an independent power.